Hello, welcome to the Mythology Manifest. This is my 50th video and I am going to be going back to Greek mythology to talk about a goddess in mythology who I know many have an interest in and would like to know more about. She is the goddess of magic, witchcraft, the moon and crossroads. Her name is Hecate. I hope you enjoy it. So Hecate's name means far off and others do pronounce it Hecate, but I've always found it easier to say Hecate. And she is known as a goddess in Greek mythology. But by technicality, like Aphrodite, she's really a titan. This is because her parents were the titans Perses and Asteria, who were the titans of destruction and falling stars. The only reason this makes her a titan is because she was born before the Olympians and so the gods were not a thing yet. But when they took over the cosmos, her title changed to goddess, as she either stood with the gods in the titanomachy or took no side at all. In some myths, she's actually the child of Zeus, but this is usually in later writings when it seemed that everybody was a child of Zeus. This was also in the same myths in which Hecate was said to marry Aeetes and mother Circe, which was not what happened at all in earlier myths. So I think that the Greek and Roman writers just wanted to simplify the Greek myth family tree, which is very confusing and I understand why, but I don't think changing the myths and disrupting all information from the past legends was the correct way to go about it. In the Greek times, Hecate was honoured in households as a protective goddess who brought prosperity. Many used to pray for her for help when they died, as she was closely associated with the spiritual world, ghosts and the dead. She could commune with spirits and sometimes, along with Hermes, she was said to help deliver souls to the Underworld, but she helped calm the spirits once they had left the bodies of the dead in most of the time, and that was so that they would not be scared when going into Hades. In this sense, she was quite a maternal goddess and had a very calming nature, but she never had children of her own. It was believed that her followers were viewed as her children, as was anyone who didn't necessarily fit in, as she was the goddess of odd people. As she was such a calming presence for the dead and had no connections on Earth, Hades invited Hecate to live in the Underworld and help out there, which she agreed to. So she is occasionally referenced to as a goddess of the Underworld, but not as much as Persephone. Although she was seen as a kind, motherly figure by most, Hecate was a goddess and so had a goddess's temper, which she wasn't afraid to show, which is actually quite similar to Mum's really, isn't it? There was once a mortal witch named Gale who reportedly had bad personal hygiene and bad digestive issues. Hecate offered her help, but Gale refused it, and so to stop her from upsetting others with her smell, Hecate turned Gale into a polecat. Usually, though, she turned people into her immortal animals or her familiars to help them. For example, her black dog was actually Hecate, Queen of Troy, who jumped into the ocean after the fall of her kingdom. So she wouldn't drown, Hecate turned her into a dog, made her immortal, and took her as a familiar. Another time was just before Alcmene gave birth to Heracles. Hera, who hated Alcmene and did not want Heracles born, had told Aletheia, who was the goddess of childbirth, not to let him be born, and Alcmene's friend Galanthus tricked Aletheia and Hera into letting Heracles be born. So as a punishment, Hera turned her into a weasel. But Hecate took pity on her, and instead of reversing Hera's actions, she took Galanthus in as a familiar, and later, in thanks, Heracles built a temple to Hecate. She also helped the goddess Demeter in her search for her daughter Persephone. When Persephone was abducted by Hades, and it was decided that Persephone would spend a third of the year in the Underworld and the rest on Earth, Hecate became Persephone's companion to and from the Underworld each year, and spent a lot of time with her when she was down there, as it was Hecate's home as well. I mentioned Hecate's influence in finding Persephone in my video on Hades and Persephone, which there is a link to in the description. In this myth, Hecate is depicted as an old wailing woman, which is one frequent depiction of her, making her seem almost grandmotherly and helping with the maternal beliefs, but not the ethereal goddess side of her. The second depiction is more common, and she was said to be a beautiful woman and was initially painted as a single figure. But slowly, as her character and personality evolved, statues and paintings began depicting her as having 3 faces and 3 bodies. Sometimes these were physical and united, other times they were like spirits or visualizations of her power and influence with magic and the dead. It was said that these three bodies and faces were said to represent time, the past, the present, and the future. And also, with her being a very minor goddess of the moon, the three parts of her were meant to represent three parts of the moon: a crescent, a full moon, and another crescent, which is now a symbol for the occult and pagans who worship Hecate under the same name, or sometimes by the name of the triple goddess. The depiction of her with three bodies and faces is also meant to represent crossroads and choices, which is why she's the goddess of these. This depiction of her has a lot more symbolism than the old lady version, so I think it's more likely that she was worshipped as the woman with three bodies. The ugly old crone version was also created in the early Christian period, when witches and witchcraft was demonised, and this is where we get the ugly old witch with animal stereotype, which everyone knows now. So that is why I think Hecate probably wasn't always depicted as an old scary woman. No matter if she was an old lady or three beautiful women, she was usually depicted holding two torches or a key, but mainly the torches. She was said to use these to guide her and the spirits through the underworld, and she also used these torches against the giant Clytius in the Gigantonomachy, which was a war against the giants, and this secured her role as a goddess. Not only was Hecate worshipped in the Greek times, but she was also a chthonic goddess that preceded the Olympians, and it seems that she was highly worshipped in Thrace, and in many places around the world before the Greek gods. This is similar to Persephone, whose early name was Ereshkigal, but we have less information on the early worship of Hecate and if she had any other names. A shrine to Hecate was placed at the entrances of homes or even cities, hoping to protect them from evil spirits that roam the world. She is still worshipped today by pagans and Wiccans as the triple goddess and a moon goddess. She was a very powerful and influential goddess, and although she's the goddess of magic and witchcraft, Circe is often known as the goddess of sorcery. And from this I take that everything magical comes from Hecate, and Circe is the one who wields it. Hecate is viewed as a good goddess, but extremely powerful, so she could be very dangerous if she maybe lost her temper or decided to become evil. And I think that Circe is meant to represent that side of Hecate's power, but I will be discussing her in another video. And that is really it for Hecate. Let me know what you think of her down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, or even follow this channel's Twitter, which there is a link to in the description below. In this video, I mentioned Hades, Persephone, and Ereshkigal, and these are all in my Greek Mythology Manifest playlist, so feel free to check those out if you want to. I also have videos for Norse mythology, revision, reviews, and mini-myths. And mini-myths is mythology for children, so please, if you want to watch those, please do, and let anybody with kids or who teaches kids know, so that they too can become interested in classics. Let's keep classics alive. I will see you next time on the Mythology Manifest.